welcome to the Lounge with Travefy Academy, where we get to hear from travel industry voices and experts to learn more about their story and what they see on the horizon for travel professionals. And I'm Stephanie Grice, joined by David Chait as well.
Hello, everyone.
And today our guest is Erika Richter with American Society of Travel Advisors, or also known as ASTA, who is the leading global advocate for travel advisors, the travel industry, and the traveling public. So Erika Richter is currently Senior Director of Communications at ASTA. And Erika, welcome to the Lounge, and thanks for joining us here today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you being here. We know there's so much, powerful and important information that you can share and educate our listeners on. Now, I had the opportunity to get to know Erika, over years at ASTA Global Conventions and just working with the amazing advocacy and work they've done. But while many of our listeners might already be familiar with you, there's probably a lot that are not. And so if you wouldn't mind giving us, your 30-second background on where you are today in the industry and what your role looks like, I'm sure that'd be super helpful for everyone.
Sure. So as Stephanie mentioned, we are a advocacy association. Our primary function is to advocate for travel advisors at all levels of government and before the traveling public. And before I moved into my role as Senior Communications Director, I actually worked in our Government Affairs Department. So I've been a part of both the promoting and the defending side of ASTA's functions. Now I'm on the communications front, and really for the past few years, my primary role has been to advocate to the traveling public the importance of using a travel advisor. And over the past few years, we've seen a lot of consumer media pick up about just that, the value of using a travel advisor, and it's kind of been like a renaissance era, if you will, for the travel advisor. So it's been a lot of fun for me to be a part of those conversations. And obviously we're facing a crisis right now, so those conversations I'm having with the media are very different, but that's my primary role right now with ASTA. And we're a small but mighty team, and we represent all travel advisors. And so if you're not a member of ASTA, there's a place for you in our community. And so I have to shamelessly plug that in. So
important, do it.
That is so awesome. And you kind of touched on already how you got into the industry and with ASTA, but it's always really fascinating just to learn how people like you got the start in the travel industry. So can you take us back to how long you've been in the industry, and how did you get your start, but really what made you want to dive into the industry and stay here?
Well, wow. So I lived in Washington, D.C. for longer than I care to admit. So I currently live in Portland, Oregon. I made the move about 2 years ago, but prior to that, I got my start in Washington, D.C. like most people do in the government. So I worked in campaign politics in Michigan. That's really where I thought my career was going. And then, like most people who are interested in that career path, I decided to move to Washington, D.C. My sister lived there. She'd been there long before me. So Mom was totally cool with me going to D.C. Because my sis was there. And my sister works in the Senate, where she's been forever. So I thought, why not just follow in her footsteps? And funny side note is the apartment that I found in DC, my first apartment, happened to be across the street from my sister. So that was not planned at all. But again, Mom loved that.
What part of DC did you live? I used to live in DC.
Columbia Heights.
Nice.
Yeah, 14th and Irving, right there by the metro. So yeah, it was a nice start. I was close to family, and I didn't take my sister's advice on how to get started. I didn't want her help. I was like, no, I got this. I'll do this. And I walked around Capitol Hill, and I hand delivered my resume to all of the members of Congress offices that I wanted to work for, which I guess you're not really supposed to do, but I did it anyway. And I happened to hand my resume to a legislative aide in Congressman Dingell's office, and he was the only one in that office. And he was like, actually, we're looking for interns in the fall. And being that I'm from Michigan, and I had the Michigan political connection, he was like, can you start after Labor Day? And I was like, Yes. Yes, I can. So in DC, when you're interning, it's just not paid. So naturally, I had 2 other jobs to support that effort. And then from there, I moved into political fundraising, where I spent a lot of time selling my soul. No, I'm just kidding. I worked in the political fundraising world for a few years through the 2012 election cycle. And to make a short story long, ended up moving into the trade association world. So I worked for another trade association for about 2 years. And that's when I really started to understand what trade associations were, why they existed, what their function was in DC. So I actually worked in the chemical industry. Don't hate me. So I worked in the chemical industry at a trade association. And a lot of the trade associations are set up the same way. And the reason why they are located in Washington, D.C. is because of the proximity to our nation's capital and to the lawmakers who need to be educated. And so, you know, members of Congress and lawmakers, they don't know everything about every industry. And so it's our job when bills are being created, or even when bills are passed, for us to go in and educate and say, hey, this is what the impact would be on our industry. This is why you need to support this bill, or this is why we don't support this bill. So it's a lot of education. And that's what lobbying and government affairs is. And then on the commercial side, it's connecting with people in the industry, trade shows, business development. And after some time in the chemical industry, I realized that chemicals weren't a lot of fun. So, surprise, surprise. And at that time, the Freedom to Travel to Cuba Act was just getting started, and it was moving pretty quickly, and I thought that was a lot of fun. And anyone that works in DC knows that, you know, when you're working on a piece of legislation, it moves in inches. And when something's moving really fast, it's kind of fun and exciting, and especially for the Freedom to Travel to Cuba Act, like that was a big, sexy, you know, piece of information, piece of legislation. And so I had the opportunity to connect with ASTA for a position in their government affairs department. And I went for it because I just thought that the bill itself was fun. And I knew that ASTA advocated for the freedom to travel to Cuba. And I really aligned with that. And not only that, but as I mentioned, I was a political fundraiser for some time. And I found out that ASTA had a really healthy political action committee, which I think is really important for any trade association, because that's a really important part of advocating for our interests. And so between that and Cuba, it was kind of a no-brainer. So I joined ASTA in the Government Affairs Department 2015, I think, 2014. I can't remember, 2014 going into 2015. So yeah, I'm going on my 6th year with ASTA, and
that's great.
So I guess you could say I've been in the industry for 6 years. It does not feel like that long compared to how many years many of our members have been in business. So I say that with, you know, just keep that in perspective, because honestly, a lot of our members have been in business for, you know, 20, 30 years. And so my experience just pales in comparison to their experience. But I did have the opportunity to dig in on the government affairs side of things. And that requires us to really understand the nuances of our members' businesses, because our role in government affairs is to advocate on their behalf for their business interests at both the state and the federal level. And so I did get a crash course in the industry very early on.
A lot of acronyms.
Yeah, and I needed to be able to articulate what our interests were as an industry. And really, to do that, you have to understand the business of the industry. So from there, it was kind of a weird situation. Our communications lead at the time had left the company to move out of state. And we didn't have anybody working in communications at that time. And so I kind of jumped in and started taking on more in that arena. And there was one story that I helped land in the Washington Post, and it was so instant, and I was so green. I had no idea what I was doing. It was a reporter that, I won't name him, but a lot of people know him. I had no idea who he was. I was just like working with him. I'm like, yeah, and we're just like talking, and then the story came out, and it was a really positive story for ASTA and the travel industry. And I remember feeling so excited because in communications, you know if you're doing a good job pretty instantly. And I'd never had that sort of instant satisfaction in the government affairs world. And I developed a really good relationship with that reporter who, you know, had in his past in the travel industry, a lot of people kind of shied away from him, whereas me, I had no idea who he was. So I was just like talking, and then I realized that I really liked that. I really enjoyed that component of it because it's so similar to government affairs. You know, you're talking about your members' interests, you're advocating for travel advisors, and then within days, you see the results. Yeah. And so I started doing more of that until eventually I said, you know what, I just want to do this. This is what I want to do. To which my boss, Evan, was like, well, who's going to do government affairs? And I was like, remember Genevieve, our intern? Yeah, she's great. She'll come back and she'll do it. And she's Canadian, so she's got a good 5, 10, 6 years before she's completely dated. No, but Genevieve's great, and she's been a tremendous asset for our team. So it was pretty seamless. Genevieve came in and took over my old role in government affairs, and then I moved over to communications, and here we are.
That's great. You know, I think, you know, those types of situations I feel like are just perfect when you follow your passion. I've seen it, in myself, even members of the TradFi team, you start doing certain things and you realize where your passions lay. And so when you have the ability to convert that into your actual, contribution and impact, but also, gig and role, that's great.
Yeah. Oh, I've learned so much. I mean, I actually went to school for political science and public relations. I double majored. And so I never thought that I would actually use all of my degrees. You graduate from college and you're like, oh, I'll just take what I can get. But looking back, I've had the opportunity to utilize both of my degrees in what I went to school for. I never thought that I would fall into public relations, but I'm glad that I did. It's become a passion of mine, just being the spokesperson for the industry and facilitating our message to a broader audience. It's actually it's a meaningful job. I love my job. So, and it's hard right now, but this is where I feel like I can make the most impact with our team and for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think everyone is appreciative that you are in that role. I think you do a great job advocating, communicating, and, for Travify obviously we work with travel advisors. And so, we're an ASTA member and work with you, and it's been fantastic. So we're glad you're doing it, and thank you. Now we'd love to chat a little bit more. As you mentioned, it's a difficult time right now for the industry. But before jumping into a little bit more specifics on the current climate and things, I want to take another step back just for our listeners in terms of, we know most advisors or lots of advisors, touch ASTA in various ways, but they may not know all of the ways that ASTA is championing advisors and different pieces. And so generally speaking, and I know this is the type of thing that could go on forever because of all the great work being done, but at a high level, what are the different things that ASTA does for travel advisors and for the industry? And then we can dive in a little more specifics on the current world and environment.
So first and foremost, we're advocates for the industry. And that means that we are watching every piece of legislation that may impact our industry at both the state and the federal level. So for those who remember the California AB5 bill, that was a huge victory for ASTA. And that's a perfect example of why we exist as an association, because it was our job to go into the California legislature and say, look, the gig economy, we get it. However, you might not understand how our industry works and operates and how detrimental that would be. So let us explain it to you. And in fact, let us deliver thousands and thousands of other travel advisors who can also explain it to you. So on the advocacy front, on both the state and the federal level, it's our job to make sure that not only that we're monitoring those bills and pieces of legislation, but that we're providing opportunities for our members to engage as well. So we do have action alerts and grassroots alerts that anytime something's happening in a state or even at the federal level, we have a portal that's pretty easy for anyone to use, where you literally just type in your address. You can edit the pre-written letter if you want, or if not, you can just sign your name and ship it off. And we provide access to how exactly advisors can advocate for themselves as well, because the volume is what makes the difference. Power in numbers is what makes the difference. And so going into the CARES Act, the second round of relief funding, we had almost 30,000 travel advisors submit letters to their members of Congress and to the administration, and that was really important. In fact, we have one right now. So if you go to asta.org/advocacy, whether you're a member or not, you can send an action alert through that system to your member of Congress to tell them specifically how you want them, the government officials, to support our industry in the next round of relief funding. So we do provide those opportunities in times of crisis and when we need to act fast, but also on an ongoing basis. So I know, David, you've been to our Advocacy Day, our legislative day. So once a year.
So much fun.
It is a lot of fun. It is. And it's one of my favorite events because it's so unique to ASTA. I mean, we all go to a million trade shows and conferences and events, but nobody can do this, the advocacy component of it. And so we bring in hundreds of advisors and we set up, I think we're now doing it over a 3-day period of time, but we set up the appointments and you go and you talk to your members of Congress, sometimes the actual member of Congress or their staffers, and you just talk about your business. And those relationship developing opportunities are so important because when times like this occur, we can fall back on those relationships and those inroads that we've spent years creating, and it really does pay off. So that is our first pillar. I mean, I can't say enough about that because advocacy really is our mission on both the government side and the consumer media side of things. So, and then on the consumer media side of things, I provide opportunities for travel advisors to connect with their local media. I interface with the media on a daily basis, and so when there's an opportunity for me to just connect a travel advisor to the source, I do that. And then also, I'm out there, I'm like the evangelist. I'm like trying to make everyone a true believer. So, I'm out there just, shouting from the rooftops, responding to inquiries, taking reporters to task if I have to, really fighting those battles, but also developing those relationships too. And those relationships are so important because in a time like this, when we're in the middle of this massive crisis, those relationships are how I can help convey our story to the broader public. So advocacy, both on the government side and the media side, is really what we do for ASTA. And then I can go into some other fun things, but on education and training, but those are our primary functions.
Awesome. No, I mean, that's great. And, in my mind, I think of it more broadly as education and awareness, and it's just different audiences. Exactly. And, we know that advisors add so much value that make dreams happen, value in terms of making our travel dreams happen, in terms of duty of care, et cetera. And, making the world aware of that value and protecting it, I think is enormous. And as you said, I can't speak highly enough of the legislative days, as a supplier, being there with advisors and meeting with your representatives and members of Congress, hearing from constituents what their needs are is enormous. And, hearing from business owners what their needs are, I think, I would imagine goes a long way as compared to hearing from an advocacy group itself, because you're seeing that person who's impacted, good, bad, et cetera. So very cool stuff and really, really great on that. So bringing it more to the current environment where, our heart breaks, as I'm sure everyone in the industry is seeing, the impact of coronavirus and the way it has, ravaged the global economy. But, obviously with, much higher impact in many ways to the travel industry, with, lots of shutdowns, et cetera. You mentioned with, support for walking through, CARES Act, and advocating to make sure that advisors are taken care of in terms of these pieces. But at a high level, what have been specific to this current environment, the types of work and pieces that ASTA has been doing to help support our industry?
Well, gosh, I go back a few months ago. It seems like years ago. When this first started to impact our industry, everything was moving so fast, and I felt like I didn't sleep for months because I was working on tight deadlines in media markets across the globe, and just trying to provide as much information as possible, because travel advisors have their finger on the pulse of the traveling public more than anybody, especially within the cruise industry, where we really had the first hit in the media cycle. And so, I was just powering through that as best as I could, while at the same time working with our government affairs team to really understand what our options were. And we realized that we needed to have regular ongoing communications for our members. And so there was a stretch of time where we had weekly updates for our members, where actually for the industry as a whole, and then we moved to members only because we really were getting into the nitty-gritty of relief options. Mm-hmm. But that regular communication was because things were changing so fast, day to day, hour by hour. And so that was our way of just gathering everyone together and saying, look, this is what we know is happening. This is what we don't know anything about yet, but here's what we think might happen, and here's how we compare. So we were doing a lot of triaging, and it was all about regular communication, consistent communication. And then once we saw that there were opportunities for specific relief for our industry, we went for it. We advocated for it. And we actually obtained specific relief in our largest stimulus package in our nation's history. So of the $25 billion set aside for airlines in the CARES Act, ticket agents or travel agents, travel advisors fall in that category. And so there's specific things that our industry needs to take into account when applying for that specific relief. And for some members, that option isn't the best option. So mm-hmm. that was our role, and that is still what we're working on right now, is helping advisors really understand what sort of relief is going to be the best option for them. And that is what we are doing on an ongoing basis through our webinars, through our advocacy alerts. And so if you're a member of ASTA, you can review all of that information. A lot of our members were tuning in, daily, trying to figure out, okay, is the PPP loan my best option, or the economic disaster loan, is that the best option, or unemployment, and so there were a lot of opportunities for us to really explain what we think might be best for advisors and help provide them as much guidance as possible. So that's a lot of what we've been doing, and then simultaneously continuing to advocate and make sure that our industry's issues are front and center, which is why just last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't know what day it is anymore, we sent a letter to the CDC director. And we said, you should go read the letter, because we took them to task. And we said, look, this is what we need. This is how our industry is impacted. This is what we need from you to help restore confidence in traveling. And so that, falling back on advocacy, is one of the most important roles that we play, because if we're not talking to the regulators and to the members of Congress, that they don't know just how much our industry is impacted. I think most people know that the travel industry has been hit pretty hard, but specifically our small businesses and the travel advisors, we are out there every chance that we get to make sure that we're providing specific action items that could help our industry. So that's what we're doing right now. And again, everyone can take a part in that mission with us, whether they're a member or not. So I really do encourage everyone to go to asta.org/advocacy and find those opportunities to connect with your lawmakers, because we're going to be going through a couple different rounds of relief funding, and it's just important that they hear from the industry and their constituents as much as they hear from ASTA.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we share out this conversation, we'll be sure to share that link so that anyone, whether you're an advisor, whether you're a supplier, anyone, you could go there and, take your part in supporting our industry as we prepare for our next great recovery. So with that, one, more broad question on the current situation as well as recovery is, so on the one hand, as you mentioned, really great opportunities that ASTA has helped make sure are available to advisors, whether it's the EIDL, PPP, and I know that windows on the PPP extended from 8 weeks to 24, and so there's opportunities to have that support last longer. But there's, with all of these programs, there's a moment in time where, for lack of a better word, we're all back to on our own, growing our businesses and getting back to a point of sustainability. With things like, a mixed bag of, we've seen in just, as a platform, an increase in the number of proposals and, really a lot of that pent up demand for travel starting to come back. But there's also things out there like the likely European travel ban for the US, et cetera. In your mind, what are some of the biggest risks or roadblocks to recovery we're seeing? And what are some of the biggest opportunities that you're seeing right now for, again, our industry making what I have no doubt will be a fantastic comeback?
Well, I'll start with this. I'll start with a little anecdote. So for those of you who don't know, I also am the managing editor for ASTA's Travel Advisor magazine, because why not? And, no, I really enjoy it because I'm a natural storyteller, and I enjoy that. And I remember this was years ago when I was first taking on that project. I spent a lot of time in ASTA's storage closet going through our historical papers and documents and stuff. I was just fascinated by it. And for people who don't know, we've been around for almost 100 years, I think like 80 years. And our history is it's just remarkable. The resilience of the travel agent is remarkable. And when you think about how we started as the American Steamship Tour Association to where...
You know that.
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. To where we are now, and the progression in between. And you think about how many world events happened between the time that we were founded, world wars, just catastrophes, right? And you think about how resilient the travel professional has been throughout history. I think that if history is our guide, the travel advisor will remain resilient. And I'm so confident in that because I remember flipping through all of our historic, documents, and I'm thinking, wow, like we even beat the internet.
Yeah.
We never underestimate the resilience of a travel agent. I mean, we have made it through so many challenges. And so I do remain hopeful and optimistic that travel advisors and agents will make it through this specific crisis just based on our history alone. And so I'll leave everyone with that to noodle on. And I do think that there is an opportunity as well, because in order for our industry to recover, the traveling public, they need to have two things. They need to have income, discretionary income, and they need to have confidence in the travel system. Now, ASTA can't really help on the discretionary income side of things, but we can advocate for policy changes that fall in line with that, just like every industry that falls in line with discretionary spending would be advocating for that. And I think we all do. I mean, I think that the traveling public doesn't not want to have money to travel. So, that's something that's important for everybody, but we have to understand that we're also facing a severe economic recession with, I think it's 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people having lost their job. And so we're all aware of what that means for the travel industry. But there are ways to work through that. And then the second component of what we need to get back on track is confidence in our travel systems. And that's something that we can work on. and that we are working on. And confidence needs to come from our federal government.
Yeah, going back to your letter, which is what really brought on this, is yeah.
Yeah. And that is where we are pushing hard and fast. And if you have the time to read any of the letters that we've sent to regulatory industries, you will hear it in our tone that we are pushing very hard on that, because it is going to be one of the most important components of recovery for our industry. And so when will that happen? We hope soon. There's still a no sale order in place. And now with Europe potentially banning American travelers, that's a significant hit, especially because Europe is one of our most lucrative outbound markets. And so with the no sale order in place, coupled with the EU banning American travelers, that doesn't help anything. And so we're working through that, rest assured, but we also know that it's going to take some time. In the meantime, what can travel advisors do? Where are those opportunities? There are many, and we can go into that later. But I will say that when the traveling public returns, which they will, we know that they will, they're going to need expert advice more than ever. They are going to need the help and guidance of travel professionals more than ever. And travelers who are savvy enough to use a travel advisor know exactly what I'm talking about if they were stuck overseas when borders were closing. And travelers who weren't savvy enough to use a travel advisor know exactly what I'm talking about if they were stuck overseas trying to figure out how to get home on their own. So for that reason alone, and there are many other reasons, but for that reason alone, I'm very confident that the traveling public will look to travel advisors more than ever before. And that is my mission, and that is my goal. When we get back to the place where we're traveling again, you better believe that I'm going to be out there shouting from the rooftops over and over again, this is why we work with travel advisors. So there's opportunity there.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think obviously this entire situation is unfortunate on 1,000 different levels, from obviously starting with health and human life all the way to the economic impacts. But I agree 100,000% that this shows the value of a travel advisor. And while the size of the pie is smaller now, and the pie itself will take a while to grow back if you think about all of travel spending. But I think the piece of pie, that percentage that is travel advisors from day one, as travel starts creeping back, is going to be bigger because people are seeing the value in there. And if we have a bigger slice of the pie when it starts to grow, that's fantastic for the industry and fantastic for the amazing advisors and all the work that they're doing. So I agree tenfold.
Yeah, exactly what David said. We've been talking, I mean, obviously so many advisors, and we've had all these webinars about just navigating COVID. And that's always the one thing that comes up is, people are like, oh yeah, I really need a travel advisor. This is why. And so, yeah, super important. But one question that I wanted to ask you, Erika, though, is I want to chat about the ASTA Global Convention, because like so many conferences this year, they've had to go virtual. So I'm really curious what that was actually like, what that decision was like, and what can attendees expect with this being virtual this year?
Wow. Let me unpack that one. So it was a hard decision. And not because of the risk factors, but because for those of you who have attended our global convention, you know that it is our hallmark event of the year. And what we do as an advocacy association really is about bringing people together as a community and for advisors to connect with our amazing supplier partners and to do business. And a lot of that business is done face-to-face, and it's really important for our members. And those networking opportunities is one of the really primary reasons why advisors and suppliers and industry professionals from all across the industry attend our events, because they know that under the ASTA banner, there's a lot of content that they can't get anywhere else. There's a lot of relationship building exercises they can't get anywhere else. And so being that our convention was supposed to be in Washington, D.C., we were monitoring very closely what those developments were, what the mayor of D.C. was considering, and we came to the decision that we were going to move virtual for the health and safety of our staff and of our industry, and that was the most important reason and why we decided to move to a virtual setting. We've never done a virtual conference before. I don't think many of our partners in the industry have done a virtual conference before, so please be kind and bear with us. We're trying our best. But I think that I know that our staff, our team, they are working around the clock to make sure that we are bringing the content and the connections that our industry has come to expect from our convention, and I am certain that will happen, and the price is right too. So we really hope that advisors consider joining us. We have Elaine Chow, the Department of Transportation Secretary, delivering a message. We have a lot of fun, exciting, different things that we're doing that I've been helping out with. All of our training and education for the Verified Travel Advisor program is going to be available, and just really unique opportunities to network. So we're working with our new technology partners to make sure that that's happening. And so I think that it's going to be okay. I do. I think that we're all adjusting and that this is still going to be a great event. And so travel advisors should plan to join us. And if you can't financially make that commitment, we also have scholarship opportunities.
That's great.
Yes, and many of them available. So don't let that be something that gets in your way. Just contact our membership team, ask ASTA at asta.org, ask them about the program, and they'll connect you. So we're really trying to make sure that everyone who can join is able to join us. And fingers crossed, it's a lot more people that we would get in person. That's what we're hoping. And so that the next time we meet in person, we can have an even bigger event, hopefully safely, of course. But we know that it's going to be an adjustment. And so I think that we're going to pull off a really, really great event. I hope. And I hope that the rest of the industry joins us, but it was a challenge for us, and it still is a little bit of a challenge, if I'm being honest. We're working through it just like everyone else, but I'm confident that our team's going to pull off something great.
Oh yeah, I mean, this year is, I think, for everyone, in whether it's conferences or, for advisors in the way they're communicating or working with clients, or for us as technology platforms, it's a year of trying new things and adapting, but we're excited for it, and it's, you never know the things you learn and things there. And as you mentioned, we're sure decisions like that aren't made lightly, but, kudos to you and the ASTA team for moving forward with the conference and the way and form it needs to be for this year.
So I have basically one more question for you, then we get into rapid fire. We always just like to ask, is there anything that you want to say, or something that we never asked, that we didn't cover, that you want to bring up, or anything? And it's okay if not. We just always like to ask it.
An hour? No. So what is? I'll say this. So I think a lot of people, when they think of ASTA, they think that we're a team of like 200, and we're not. We are a team of 30-ish. So actually, sorry, 26. I think. Anyways, between 25 and 30. And yeah, so we're a small but mighty team, and we work so hard to make sure that we're connecting with members in every way that we can. But we rely on our industry to help support us so that we can keep fighting for you. And so if you know a travel advisor that's not a member of ASTA, ask them why not, and then send them our way, because it's going to take the entire industry supporting our mission so that we can get through this. And I said before, this is my shameless plug for ASTA, but I don't apologize. Sorry, not sorry. Everyone should be a member of ASTA, because what we are doing for the industry impacts travel advisors, whether they're a member or not. We are working for the better outcome that we're all hoping for travel advisors. And that doesn't just touch members of ASTA, right? It's everybody. Everybody benefits from the work that we do. And so we really hope that during this time, the industry sees why we exist, why it's important to have your national trade association in your corner. And we can only do that work if we have the support of the industry. So now is the time to really think about your membership, because it's your business and that's what we're fighting for. So if you're not a member, please join us, asta.org/join. And if you have questions, our team is ready and able to answer all those questions. And there are so many benefits that you get. One of the most exciting benefits is something that is kind of new, that developed organically, if you will. I started a Facebook group for ASTA members called the ASTA Press Inbox. And when I started it, it was really just a way for me to connect with travel advisors when I needed a quick answer for a media inquiry. So, and media inquiries come in, like I have one for the New York Times that I'm working on right now, and they need it like yesterday. But I would go to that Facebook group and say, here's what I'm working on, here's what I need, who can I connect the dots to? And it was an easy way for me to get the information that I need, connect the dots with the media, and that's how I use the group. It's evolved from so it's no longer called the ASTA Press Inbox, it's called the ASTA Member Lounge.
Ooh. Lounge.
Yeah, we like
Speaking
that
our
term.
language.
Yeah.
So because it's so much more than media inquiries, now we're doing Facebook Live training. So for those of you who know Sandra McLemore, social media guru, she comes in and does Facebook Live trainings for people in the group. We had Eben doing live Q&A. Eben's our Executive Vice President of Advocacy. So he popped in there and did a live Q&A. We love Facebook Live because it's very interactive. In fact, we had our General Counsel in there taking questions, doing a live session. So it's really unique content that we're seeing our members really like. So we're constantly adapting and adjusting to ways that we can be more efficient and helpful as a resource for the industry. So when you're a member of ASTA, you get to join the ASTA Member Lounge, which is a lot of fun. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that, because I think it's in this time that we're all in, we're spending a lot of time on the computer and on social media. So
yeah, that stuff adds huge value.
Yeah, and it's a way to also connect with your industry and with your colleagues. And provide feedback that's really important for us. So we send out a lot of research surveys. Take those surveys. They help me talk to the media and tell our story better. They help Eben and our advocacy team advocate for better relief. So come join the group. And on the education front, a lot of people are spending time getting more certifications, brushing up on their professional development, and we have a program for you. So the ASTA Verified Travel Advisor Program, it's unlike any certification program. It's very much for the professional who's been in the industry and knows a thing or two. It covers a lot of ground. I'll say that. It's very in depth, but we've had people who've been in the industry for 30 years say, oh my gosh, I needed this. I needed this refresher. I needed to brush up on these skills. And our general counsel spent a lot of time putting unique courses together as part of the Verified Travel Advisor certification. So things like agency relations in the law and, things like that. So I think that and if an advisor's like, oh, I need to do more, like, consider the Verified Travel Advisor certification program. We've got great deals going on for that right now. And then as a member, we also have a lot of resources through our legal team that could be very helpful for you, like templates for your independent contractors or advisors, templates for connecting with your clients and your customers. And so the resources that you get, and the price for an independent advisor is $199. And what you get for that is tremendous value, and the dues are structured differently for every different advisor, and we're always working with advisors to make it more accessible, payment plans, things like that. So I would just say check it out. visit our website, see all the wonderful things that you get when you're a part of our community. Because one of the things that I tell the media all the time when they ask, well, how do I find a travel advisor, right?
Yeah.
As part of your membership, you get a profile to travelsense.org, which is our consumer-facing database that's connected to our membership database. And that's where I tell people to go. And we've had members who have gotten pretty significant pieces of business.
That's great.
From travelsense.org, from the trip quote function. Now it's not like anything, crazy, but it is a tool. Because I'm talking about it in the media and I'm connecting people to that, I said, if you want to know how to find a good advisor, number one, make sure that they're a member of ASTA. Make sure that they take their profession seriously enough to be a part of their professional trade association, because that's how we protect consumers. If there's ever a dispute between a travel advisor and a traveler, and that travel advisor or that company is a member of ASTA, we can step in and we can help, but only if they're a member of ASTA. So we communicate that to the traveling public, and we hope that travel advisors see that as a benefit, because it's showing their professionalism. And it's like that Better Business Bureau seal of approval, right? The Good Housekeeping seal of approval. We always tell people, make sure you're looking and asking that professional that you're working with is a member of ASTA. So all the more reason to join if you're not a member. That's all I have. It was a lot.
That's super helpful. And, I think for, a lot of our listeners that are already ASTA members, it's great for them to kind of refresh on the benefits. And I think for those that aren't, great to know how they can support the industry, join, and all of that. And now before we go, because we want to be mindful of your time and appreciate you being here, we have this fun little thing that we always like to end with rapid fire questions to get to know folks that we're chatting with. So Stephanie, I'm going to pass it over to you to take us away.
Here we go. Okay, so I think there's like 7 questions, but they're rapid fire. So so if you want to like pass or come back, just let me know. Okay, but here's the first one. You ready? What is your favorite road trip song? Like, there's so many.
I know the band, but I can't think of the song. Pass.
Okay, we'll pass. What is your favorite travel movie?
Wild.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't think about that. What is your favorite destination you've traveled to?
Greece.
Nice. Okay.
Nice.
That sounds so nice right about now. Oh, yeah, there you go. So what do you think is the most underrated destination to visit?
Underrated. The United States.
Yeah, good one.
Domestic travel, like it.
Yeah, domestic travel. What is the best meal you've ever had while traveling?
Oh my gosh, paella in Spain.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
Nice.
What is the last great book or article that you read?
Oh, I read so many. I would have to say, I'm really into By the Way, which is a column by Hannah Sampson in the Washington Post. So I check out all of her columns. So I think that I would have to say everything in that column, that category.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that one out.
Like it.
Yeah. Okay, now last one. What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you while traveling?
The craziest thing. Okay. I have something. So this is when I was working in the government. It's a little bit longer, but it's worth it. It was when I was working in the Government Affairs Department, and I was supposed to head to Arizona because we had a meeting with Senator Flake and our Arizona chapter. And it was a big meeting, and I was super excited for it. And you know how when you set your phone alarm, but it's still on silent and it never goes off?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened. And I woke up because it was a very early flight, and I woke up and I'm like, at the same time that my flight was taking off. And I knew that I had the meeting that afternoon, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I just got everything together, hopped in the Uber, just headed to the airport, and I called our travel advisor that we work with, and I was like, Mary, I'm in uh-oh, and I need your help. I'm just going to the airport. And she was like doing her thing, and she's trying to figure it out so I can get there on time. And so I got to the airport, and she told me to go up to the ticket agent desk, and she was like, hand them the phone. And I was like, I'm like, my travel agent wants to talk to you. So I did, and they were like talking in another language. I don't even know like what they were talking about. I did not understand any of the terms that were coming out of their mouth. And so the ticket agent was like, yeah, oh, I can do that. And then she handed the phone back, and Mary was like, okay, do you know what standby is? And I'm like, yes, I've never done it before. And she was like, there's one seat left, but it might work, but not work. I'm going to be on the phone with you the whole time. Just go up to the gate, like as if you were getting on this other flight, which was the last flight that would get me there just in time. So I'm sitting there, and I was the last person there, and I'm on the phone with Mary, and I'm like, am I going to make it? Because I'm watching the time. I'm like, time to get to Arizona to make the meeting. Oh my gosh. And I ended up getting that last seat on standby. And then behind the scenes, Mary was working with our ASTA chapter, who, by the way, they're all travel agents, so they knew I was late. And so they were watching my flights on their end, and Mary was like working on the transportation so that I could just go straight from the airport, find a place to change. Anyways, we made the meeting in the nick of time, but that was the most nerve-wracking travel experience.
I can't even imagine the stress during that.
I'm sweating.
But I feel like it brings our conversation full circle. Why a travel advisor?
Yes.
Exactly. And then for the best favorite travel song, I'm just gonna put everything under the category of 80s rock.
Nice.
My 80s rock playlist for my road trip. So that I'm going on actually next week. So.
Oh, nice. Where are you going?
I'm doing a big hike in the North Cascades.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that is all so good. And that story, seriously, I am like, I've got little beads of sweat now. Just like, so it's like my biggest fear. It's so scary. But again, yes, that's why you need a travel agent. That is awesome. And I just want to thank everyone again for tuning in to this episode of The Lounge with Travefy Academy. And thank you so much to our special guest, Erika, for joining us here today. This has been really fun. But everyone listening, be sure to subscribe to our podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest episodes. And we hope you enjoyed our conversation today, and join us again. But for now, stay safe, and we will catch you on the next flight.